good evening.
Good evening.
Good to see you all back, whether you're with us in person or online. So, Pastor Rick and Pastor Serena, you all know us anyway, but people online may not. That's why I have to introduce ourselves. So
That's true.
that's okay. But anyway, welcome to week 4 of our Lenten journey through Turkey and Greece. And our theme tonight is Rock of Ages. So we started out, there's a few new faces here in person tonight, so welcome to you all. We started out over in the mountains of Turkey on the Mediterranean coast and worked our way up through that country and hit Istanbul last week and crossed the border into Greece. And so now we're going to continue our way down through Greece, slowly making our way to Athens. But there's a lot of things to stop and see on the way.
On the way.
So, yeah. So,
You didn't give me, you get to be in charge this time.
I'm
You
in
didn't
charge.
give me the
Oh,
clicker.
yeah, you need Here.
Can you believe it? A man is handing over his remote. That never happens.
Very sad.
So,
Very sad,
yeah.
yes.
All right. Well, let's start with prayer. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray. Gracious God, we thank you. We thank you that you are our rock of ages. You are always with us, protecting us and being with us. And we thank you for that. We ask that your presence be here, that you guide our thoughts and actions, and that you help us to learn a little and laugh a little. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, so turn to a neighbor, partner, small group, 3, no more than 4. Think about, okay, this is kind of an open-ended question about hiding and playing hide and seek. So think about a time you hid something. Funny story about that, share that with your partner, or a time you played hide and seek, or anything under the themes, hiding, hide and seek. So go ahead and think for a minute and turn to your partner. Whoever's there.
My brother, we were playing hide and seek with the he had a bow and arrow, and he shot me, and the arrow hit my leg.
While you were hiding?
While you were hiding?
No, when I came out.
Oh, gee.
So that's how he finds you. He finds you with arrows. You hide, and then we'll kill you.
They were just little,
All right, did everybody get a chance to share? Anyone need a little more time with their group? Okay. Yeah, so anyone have one they're dying to share with the group?
Brian was playing hide and seek with his brother Bob when he came out from being, and then he got shot by an arrow.
Oh my
no,
gosh.
just a little toy arrow.
Oh, a toy
A
arrow.
toy arrow, but still.
Had me a little scared
Way
there.
better than my story.
That's what it sound like.
Oh my gosh.
I just called to mind when I was a kid. I used to hide in my parents' bed and jump out and scare them. And the one time I did, I fell asleep. They woke me up a couple hours later. Like, we were wondering where you were.
That's too funny.
Yeah. Do you want to tell your story about the Easter eggs?
Yeah, so our kids love Easter egg hunts, and so we would hide them around the house, and they got so much out of it, and it was the best thing when they were like younger, 5, 6, 7 years old. But then I got lazy. Hiding them, and I just decided, I'm just gonna hide them all in one place. It'll be really fun for them to find them all in one place. So they're tearing the house apart, like, Dad, where are the eggs? And then they eventually found them, and they thought it was just the most hilarious thing in the world. So that's what I did from then on. I just hid them all in one place. And then eventually, when they found them, they just laughed.
And then they stopped asking him, right?
Well, it'd be like a chicken putting them all in one place because she was going to set on them.
Yeah, that's right, yeah, you got it.
Okay.
Yep, see?
Go.
There's examples in nature of what I do, yep.
We tell Laura and John about that. Yeah, Dale.
I guess you'd call this a life story about the fact that I like growing trees. And we've got our share of oak trees now produce acorns and get a kick out of how the squirrels and chipmunks all are hiding them everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
And they can only find like 1% of them.
Yeah.
The rest of them over summer start sprouting and coming up wherever they left them.
Yeah.
That's my story.
Well, we used to have Easter egg hunt here, and when my son Alan, he was kind of devilish, and so they hid him over to the parsonage, and he was making divots in the ground to put the eggs in.
Yeah.
Poor Pastor Sipe was mowing his lawn one summer day and ran across one of them eggs.
Yeah,
Yikes.
that'll happen, yeah, great. So, our next slide.
I'll get that for you here, just, oh, did it work? Okay.
You got a hide and seek story?
Hold on. I got it.
Okay, so our faith focus has to do with Rock of Ages. No matter what challenges come our way, our Rock of Ages is always there for us. And I'll think of a Rock of Ages song, you know, cleft or me. Let me hide myself in thee. Do I have a volunteer willing to read? This is our only scripture tonight, Psalm 18, 1-3. Anybody out there willing to read?
I'll give it a go.
Oh, okay, sure, go ahead.
Go for it, Joe.
Yeah.
I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock, my fortress, my deliverer. My God, my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield, and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised, so I shall be saved from my enemies.
Does verse 3 sound familiar to anybody?
Yep.
Yeah, there's a
Come on, start
song,
singing it.
I will
Yes.
call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised, so shall I be saved from my enemies. The Lord liveth, and blessed be the rock. Anyway, some of you know it, some of you don't. You might, it's a camp song. Yeah, familiar camp song. So the other interesting thing about Rock of Ages, the hymn story behind Rock of Ages, has to do with a pastor who was not Martin Luther, but another one, an Episcopal, who was traveling by foot, and a storm came upon him, and he was looking for cover, and he found this tiny little cleft of rock. He climbed in there, and as he's waiting out the storm, he's like, this would be a great starting line for a hymn. Rock of Ages, cleft for me, let me hide myself in thee, because that's what he did, and then added in. So that's how he got his first verse, and then went home and wrote the rest. Cool. So very interesting. But yeah, but the Bible, you know, we know Peter the rock, and we know of in the New Testament, but in the Old Testament, God as a rock, God as our fortress. Rock being, you know, something that seems to be permanent, or something that protects. So, and then we'll see a lot of that in our trip.
Yeah. So the picture there behind the fog and the snow is giant rocks in a place called Meteora, and we'll get to that later on. So.
Yep. All right, Greek time.
Oh yeah, so we learned Turkish a few weeks ago. So tonight we're going to learn some Greek. Some of these words you might know. Some of these might be a little challenging to know, because not only do you say things in Greek, things are written in Greek, which we'll get to more next week, when our theme next week is
So these
it's
are the
Greek
Greek
to
letters.
you, Greek to me.
Right.
So.
Where in front is the Anglified. I make up words.
That's the,
We know what you mean.
yeah.
But you
So-
understood me.
Yeah, so you have the English transliteration, they call it.
Anglified.
In English letters, right? And then you have the Greek letters after that, and then what it actually says in English. So Gaia Su is actually hello. Gaia Su, right? Yeah, there you go. And then Eucharisto. Notice there's a little bit of a word in there called Eucharist.
Eucharist, that's where the word Eucharist, which is another word for communion, comes from.
Yep.
Eucharisto,
Uh-huh.
he gave thanks, Jesus. Yeah.
Yep. So Eucharisto is thank you. Yeah. So Kalimera, good morning. Remember in Turkish, günaydin was good morning, which kind of sounded a little odd. Pretty clear in Greek. Kalimera is what you would say first thing in the morning. which brightens people's moods because in Greece, of course, dawn is tough on Greece, right?
Oh.
I know. I had to bring it out one more time. Yeah. I know. It's a bad dad joke. So I promise there's no more tonight.
He wasn't allowed to.
I know. So yeah. And then when you're going to take leave of someone, you would say antio, goodbye, or bye bye. So antio, right? Coffee, which is cafes, so that kind of sounds like that fits, right? Tea is sigh. I think the T is silent there. And then water, I thought was really interesting. Water in Greek is Nero.
It's interesting.
Isn't that
Or
interesting?
Nero, anyway.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. So when we learn Turkish, in Turkey they call Greece.
Shoot, you knew this
Yeah, I
this
knew
morning.
this one. Oh my gosh, yeah. Anyway, some big word that you would not guess, so that would be Greece.
Afghanistan? No.
Yunanistan. Yeah,
Yunanistan.
Yunanistan is what
Yunanistan.
Turks call Greece. Greeks call Turkey Turkiya. That sounds pretty logical, right? Yeah, and some other choice words that we're not going to mention. And then we come to your favorite phrase in all the Greek language.
Ola kala. So it's kind of like a, how are you? Like, ola kala. You say the question, the person says back to you, ola kala. All good. All good? All good. Yeah, ola kala. Ola kala.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the how you doing in
How you
Greek.
doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, there'll be a final exam next week, so
Final
make sure you're
exam.
studying. Yeah.
Everyone passes.
Yeah. I was going to include some other Greek words for food, but you probably know a lot of them if you've been to a Greek diner or places like that. So
Yeah.
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 Anyway,
Anyway. Yeah. Okay. So then Pastor Rick had to throw in another.
I had to throw in another
Another
meme that
cat
you may have
meme.
seen online. So
Yeah.
when you're surrounded by thousands of years of history, but there
There's
is
a cat. You gotta get a picture.
all take a picture of the cat, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So which we have done quite regularly and will continue to do tonight.
I like that you took a picture of somebody taking a picture of the cat.
Yeah, and then yeah.
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 You really get a close up there, that kid.
Yeah. Yep. So.
Yeah,
cool.
exactly.
That's
So
why a lot of people go there.
The cats.
it's for the cats, right? Yeah, you got it. So our first stop tonight takes us to Philippi. You may have heard of Paul's letter to the
Philippians.
This is Philippi, where that letter was written to. So Philippi was named after Philip of Macedonia. Macedonia is the province that Philippi is located in. Philip of Macedonia happened to have a son named Alexander the Great. And Alexander the Great was responsible for spreading the Hellenistic culture and language, the Greek language, across much of that area of the world. Not just in Greece, but also it filtered down into parts of Turkey,
All
Asia
the way down to
Minor back
Egypt.
then.
All the way down to
around
Egypt. So he, how did he spread the Hellenistic culture? By conquest.
Yeah.
He was a military genius. They still study his techniques in military academies, believe it or not.
Yeah. So that's how that happened. This is also where they believe traditionally that Paul, the apostle, who we were following in the footsteps of on this trip, baptized Lydia, the first convert, the first
In
woman convert, but
Macedonia.
the first convert, period, to Christianity. And if you looked in the book of Acts 16, you would find that story right there. So.
Paul himself was the first one.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different sites here. The one site at Philippi focuses on that baptism, and so they have a chapel and some frescoes, which are paintings and pictographs that we'll see here in a little bit. And they allow people to come there once a year. The chapel is open for baptisms. So they have an indoor chapel, and they also have a chapel right on the creek where they believe that Lydia was
Outdoor
baptized.
chapel.
An outdoor chapel.
Yeah.
So, and then there's frescoes that not just tell Jesus' story, they tell Paul's story mostly. So, and then outside of that area, there's the main city of Philippi, where we'll see the agora, the outdoor marketplace, and the Roman columns that we've come to all know and love. This is where Paul cast out a spirit from a slave girl, but they were worried that he was going to put the people that are normally in charge of that out of business. Right? No.
The slave girl brought money in for her owners, and they were very mad, so they had him thrown in prison. You're
right.
confusing with the trinket seller
Oh,
in
okay,
Ephesus.
yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Yep.
So.
Sorry about
That's
that.
okay.
So, yeah,
Evenings are. Yeah, we did this presentation once already, so.
that's okay.
They
Don't hold what she said.
Yeah, yeah, so when there's a mural that shows the picture of
Yeah,
all
yeah.
this, we will show that.
So anyway, they were thrown into prison,
Yeah.
and then there was an earthquake that broke open the gates, but they decided to stay behind to protect the guard, who they thought, oh, they're gonna execute this guard for letting him go.
So they stuck around,
So they
so
stuck
the guard
around.
wouldn't get
Yeah.
executed for
But-
not doing his job. You know, how could he stop an earthquake?
Yeah. So, anyway,
Cool. So these are the newer murals that are, I'm sorry, mosaics that are outside of the church. We thought they were really cool. So this is Paul, and this depicts the artist's interpretation. The pictures do not do him justice. They were just gorgeous. Pictures the vision where Paul had, where it said, "Come over to Macedonia and help us," and that was in Acts. And then Paul went over, obviously, and met Lydia here in Philippi. So this is Lydia right here, and behind that is the city, Philippi, which we'll see that. So yeah, and two of us next to them.
of course.
So, and that's the outside of the chapel. So they've got beautiful mosaics going in. There's Jesus, Mary, and the gospel writer of Gospel of St. John. He's holding the book of St. John. We'll get into that. That's Mary, the mother of Jesus.
How can you tell?
Because the blue and the red.
What the tour guide said.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what the tour guide said. That's
You're
right,
the one who
exactly.
told me it was
Got the
Mary.
halo.
It also says Mary right here in Greek.
Yeah,
You told
okay.
me that.
I did tell you that, yes.
Yeah. How do you know it's
But
Mary?
you
It
told
says so.
You told everyone this morning with the blue and the red.
I
there.
told her, yeah. Oh, yeah, the blue and the red. So, I touched on this before, but colors are important, especially in the Greek artwork, the religious artwork. So blue is the color of divinity, and red is the color of human, mortal, blue. So,
Humanity, yeah.
humanity. So the more blue you have, especially on your head, the closer you are to God. And I will get into Mary's story when we get to one of the next sites.
And then also notice around their heads how two of those figures have a halo and one does not.
Right.
The one that does not is Lydia, correct?
Yeah, but she's a saint. Now I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
now she is a saint. Now who could that be?
We have to look up. We have to look up who she is. We couldn't translate that.
Yeah.
So anyway, but,
So,
yeah. But then there's the one with Jesus.
and Jesus' halo, you notice has sort of a cross,
The cross.
behind there in the background. Yeah,
Usually
that's how you can tell Jesus.
Yeah, artists they tend to stick to certain patterns with Jesus, with Mary, but there always is a little bit of artistic interpretation as well. I mean, sometimes
Exactly.
Paul looks really emaciated, sometimes Paul looks very healthy. It just depends on the artist's interpretation of what was going on in his life. And then the gospel. So this is ego and me, I am, but we're having trouble because the Greek is different than but it's the Gospel of John, Jesus holding that. So, and then there's Paul, Timothy, and Silas. This we were able to translate.
Yes.
Paul is usually depicted with a big, well, not necessarily a big forehead, but his hair is like style. That's how you know it's Paul.
Yeah, it kind of looks at that Klingon
It's
forehead.
it's either bald there or a little tuft of hair. So poor Paul, and then Timothy and Silas, who were partners with him in spreading things throughout Macedonia.
Yeah, but those are the indicators on how you can tell who they are once we get to the
Right.
frescoes on the inside here in just a moment.
What is Paul doing with his hand?
Paul.
Looks like he's blessing,
Blessing.
right?
That's a blessing.
That's a left hand.
Yeah, but that's okay because in the right hand he's holding probably some of Paul's letters. I'm not sure which one it is.
He's doing this sort of a thing.
Yeah, it's a blessing.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yep.
It's actually his right hand.
Yeah. Jesus does that in some pictures too. So.
Yeah. Yep. It's a blessing. So here's the entrance. So down here's the baptismal font, and then it's all marble. The pictures just don't do it justice. It's a really beautiful.
It's not a large building, but there's a lot to it.
It's a chapel. It's not a chapel size, not church size. It's not designed for like regular.
What would be the estimated date of the construction of this?
This was probably in the 1980s and has been,
definitely
it
20th
was
century.
restored in the 80s, 90s.
Yeah.
It might be, some of it's original, but it's not that old. Compared to
It's
other
in excellent
places.
shape.
Yeah, because they've been doing restorations in the 80s and 90s. It might have, I don't know if they leveled the previous structure or if I I think she said they
Yeah,
just
I
completely
think so.
redid it over the course of
Yep.
quite a while. So, and then the dome up there depicts heaven, and there's light coming in, and then this is the altar space, and it's not used. If the altar was used, there'd be a curtain in front of it. We wouldn't be able to see that at all. So, but back here you can actually see Mary, Queen of Heaven. They call her Queen of Heaven. They also a lot of other things about Mary and baby Jesus depicted there.
Yep.
And then there's the dome, and then depictions of heaven, like where, you know, the angels doing that, and kind of part of the vision and revelation of what heaven looks like is what it's based on. So then throughout, and you can feel free to to chime in.
Oh, yeah.
So, in churches, especially the monasteries, they had people coming to them who couldn't read and so to teach them the stories of Scripture, they would create beautiful frescoes and wall murals to tell the story. So most of the churches, especially the older ones, have these, and the monasteries that we're going to show you later have all these murals that tell stories. So you might recognize some of them. But you can see
There's all
different
these
scenes. We're gonna zoom in on a
panels.
few,
Yep.
and show you some of the stories. So, and then again, so here, you saw a picture of that on the mosaic outside. This is another artist's rendition of Paul's vision to come over to Macedonia. So here you see Paul, and then just some people around. So come over and save us. So that's the vision. Or no, I'm sorry. This is Jesus calling him initially. Sorry.
Yeah, this is on the
I
road.
got ahead.
So this is on the road to Damascus.
This is the road to Damascus, Paul's conversion, when he was persecuting. Sorry.
Yeah. And so, but the light was so blinding that he was blind until he
Blinded.
got to Damascus.
And they had,
So he was
his
blind for a few
companions said,
days. Yep.
yeah. So he was yeah. Oops, sorry.
It's all
I
right.
got ahead. So then he came and testified that that Jesus had come to him in this vision and had saved him.
Yep.
So this is him meeting with the early church and saying, hey, I feel called. So here he's meeting with the leaders in Jerusalem, and there he is being sent out with Timothy.
Yeah.
So
I learned this morning, that in a lot of these frescoes and icons, as we'll see later on, there could be more than one action going on at a time. So there's a progression going on here. You've got Paul talking to the people at the temple in Damascus, and the people in the background are like, what are you talking about? You were just persecuting us the other day.
Right.
And so then he heads out. So that's why you've got two Pauls in the same panel there. It's a progression of action.
right. Whereas in
Yeah.
this one, it's one scene.
One scene, yeah.
Whereas here, here. Oh wait.
You know what? Yeah, there you go.
So here, there's two. This is what he says. Hey, I feel called, and then he's sent.
Yeah.
So
It's kind of like panels in a comic book, sort of.
it's certain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So and then here he is. He's coming back to meet with the elders in Jerusalem after he's been out and about, because they had an argument about whether new converts should be circumcised or not. So big debate. So he's there debating with them about that.
Yeah.
And then here we talked about Paul's prison when he was put in prison for that slave girl.
Yeah.
So here's the prison scene.
Yeah, this was here in Philippi. So,
Yes.
yeah.
And then here's the escape from prison. And they're all like, oh, okay. So, I guess it doesn't look too destroyed from the earthquake, but you can see the cracks.
Just a couple of crumbles, yeah.
Yeah.
Just enough to
cracks.
jostle the bars.
Right, Paul
open.
being released from prison. So, and then Paul going over, there's Lydia. She is a saint. Paul and his compadres all coming to have her, and then the city back there. So is there another? Oh, and then so here's another one that's two stores, two panels, the same person.
Oh yeah, I meant to put these in order.
Right. That's why I was.
This is before the prison part.
This before he went in prison. This is what he did. This is the crime he's guilty of. So this depicts demonic possession. It's not a serpent, it's demonic possession. So he healed her, and then now she's without that, and she's healed.
Again, see the progression of action there in that.
Yeah, the two scenes of her. So she made a lot of money for the people that owned her as a slave. So they were very, very mad. Yeah.
So then once we got tired of craning our necks up toward the ceiling, we decided to look down towards the floor, and there's things on the floor too. So you have this giant mosaic map of the Aegean Sea Asia Minor or modern day Türkiye, right? Türkiye on the right,
Over
and
here's
then on the
Turkey.
left
This is the
is
sea.
Greece.
And then Greece.
So this map depicts Paul's journey throughout the region. So and each of those city-looking places are exactly what they are. Those are the places that he visited along the way.
We
So
get to walk on it. This
and
seems
walk
wrong.
on it, yeah.
Yeah.
Figuratively and literally, actually, with a lot of them.
Yeah.
So as we work our way through and you zoom into some of these, it's really kind of interesting to see what these places are. So remember Troy last week? We visited there and they had that wooden Trojan horse. And the way you could tell that it was Troy is because they put a horse in the mosaic.
This is a more modern artist rendition,
okay.
obviously, and
Yeah.
the ancient church probably wouldn't have put that.
No, they
in,
wouldn't have had
but,
that there.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
this was done more in 1980s.
Yeah.
They're like, hey,
And remember in Troy, Paul had a vision to go and visit Macedonia, and the first place he went to was Neapolis. That's where his boat landed. So up in the upper right corner there is Neapolis, right there. So and then Philippi, which we'll see. Oh, we won't see Philippi, but
but it's just up there.
yeah, it's up
We
there.
saw it in
I
the
think we'll come
last-
back to it.
We
yeah.
saw it back here,
Mhm.
up here.
It's up there, yeah. It's up there. So, and then back further along the way, this is back in Turkey. That's Ephesus, with the remember the terrace houses that we saw, the ancient Roman terrace houses with all the beautiful paintings inside and all that. That's Ephesus there. So one of the biggest cities, one of the most powerful cities of the area. So where the letter to
Abandoned
the
now and a historical site.
where the letter to the Ephesians was written for.
Yep.
So, no. There's Philippi.
Oh, you
Okay.
did. Maybe you put it back in.
From
From this morning.
It's there now, but notice how close it is to Neapolis there.
Yeah,
So,
it's basically Neapolis, the port, and then,
yeah, and then he kept on going to Thessaloniki,
Mhm.
letter to the Thessalonians. We'll see that in a little bit tonight, actually.
Yep.
So, and then Beoria, which is another city there off to the right, the left, my other right. Yeah, it's been a long day. So, and then we keep on moving down. I
Oops.
clicked. You
Hey.
clicked. Stop clicking. So it happens when two people have clickers. So, and then you finally get down to Athens, which, can you tell how it's Athens?
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
There's a Parthenon, right? Yep. Yep. So, and then you have Athens, and then just down below Athens, you have Corinth.
Corinth,
So,
So.
city of Corinth.
which next week we'll talk about Corinth, and I'll share with you guys, my church heard me use it in a sermon, the Corinth Canal, which is only about 100 years old, but still very cool.
Yep.
So,
Exactly. So, okay, you may continue.
I'm allowed to now?
Yes.
The people watching the live stream are gonna get whiplash sometimes,
Oh, I know.
yeah. So, yeah, and the ancient site here, there's a cemetery from into antiquity that they've excavated and done things to, and you can see it, that's the chapel
Yeah,
right there,
chapel's over there.
the chapel we were in with the
Yeah,
murals.
and then
And then
beyond the
down-
chapel, you could kind of see the tree line out there.
That's
So
where the
there's a
river
creek
is.
there,
Creek.
river, creek, yeah.
The
So
creek.
you'll see that here in a
It's-
minute.
Or a crick, as I like to call
Or
it,
Creek.
a crick, there's the crick, we went down to the crick.
That's the creek.
So where they thought, Lydia was apparently there were a place of worship down there, and Paul found. They think it was around this area. They think so because there were stones and things like that. That it was near the great cemetery. So the nice rushing water. Got a lot of water pictures.
Yeah.
So there's an outdoor chapel that was built right along the river. So the water actually goes around this little island, goes around through. So the water comes through. There's steps that go down in. And while we were there, there was an Asian church. I'm not sure if it was Korean, where they were from, because I couldn't tell their dialect, which Asian nation it was.
They were
but did
speaking
worship.
Korean.
You think they were Korean?
Yeah.
Okay, probably. So you should have tried out your
Yeah, so
Samida.
my very limited Korean, yeah.
So they did worship, and then we got to go over there, which was kind of cool. There's a lot of pilgrimage churches that come to Greece. So yeah, and then that's Liz, our mountain goat, as we call her. You might have seen her in other pictures. She's the one who's always high up. Not afraid of heights, unless you're in that
Yep.
gondola.
Yeah.
Didn't like the gondola, but she'll climb anything by foot. So, and that's Shiraz. He's our photographer. He took mostly pictures of people. That's why Rick, we're
Yeah.
using a lot of Rick's. But
Yeah,
Rick's
he
pictures.
was kind of the cruise photographer of
Yeah.
sorts, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yep. And then down here you can see the steps going down, and so people will come down and get water as a reminder of their baptism, thing like that. People don't usually get baptized out here, but it's just a way to remember.
Not
their
that day
baptism.
anyway. It was a little cold.
Well, and we we believe, and the Greek Orthodox believe, baptism is once. You don't re-baptize
Yes.
yourself. Baptism
Yes,
is once,
exactly.
once in a lifetime thing. So it's a sacrament, not a. I'm gonna get rebaptized because we're in Jordan.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, one baptism.
And then Pastor Rick found another cat. So, and the cat escorted us over to the historical site of Philippi, the city that is abandoned and is now an UNESCO World Heritage Site.
Yeah.
For many reasons. So, 2016, it was on there.
Not
it
too long
says.
ago,
Yeah. So of course there's a theater. See, there's Liz. See the red coat?
Oh, yeah.
All the way up there, yep.
Yeah.
Up in the 300s there.
Yeah.
Somebody counted how many theaters we saw, and it was over 30. So
Yeah, I gotta go back and look.
it was
yeah.
quite a few. And then this is.
Yeah,
So
not enough fingers.
these are inscriptions on the archways going into the theater.
Yeah, on the left there you see a woman with a laurel, crowning a winner from a gladiator type battle. And then on the right side there's a warrior actually. You can kind of see it was holding a staff, and that circular feature there we think is a shield that he had on his arm.
Yep.
So,
Yep. And then just heading out more towards, you can see here where they repurposed and reused old stuff from Roman temples, turned it into a church. So this is one of the earlier places of worship, church and the crosses and things like that. Now this isn't how they found it. They put them back up just to show you how tall they were. So, and then this is what a fresco looks. Most of the time the frescoes, when they uncover them, look like this because of the deterioration. The ones that we showed you at the terrace houses were really well preserved, probably due to the climate and the fact they kind of collapsed in and were able to, just survived the centuries, whereas usually they don't survive very well.
yeah, this was very pitted and chipped and
Yeah,
all that.
just to give you
so,
a better idea.
yeah.
Okay, and Pastor Rick will explain, I don't know if this
so-
group asked, but our group a couple weeks ago asked, how did they get those tall pillars to stand up? Were they all just stone?
Yeah.
No,
so-
they weren't.
No, they weren't. So some of the pillars were just one big long stone or concrete with ash piece. A lot of times too, they were like in sections, like about 3 or 4 foot sections or something like that. So they would stack those up, but of course they could shift and fall over, which they did in earthquakes regardless of what they did. But in order to help keep them together, you see that little divot there and the hole. So they would put the pieces together and they would pour molten lead in there as sort of like a bonding agent. I guess lead is sticky enough that it can hold that together well enough that it can stack it up vertically. So that's how they did it. They would pour lead in there, and once it solidified, you had your bond, and then they could go ahead and continue building. So, but lead apparently doesn't hold up to the test of time.
Not
all
something
that
they
well.
found in the excavations. It just kind of deteriorated like wood. It took longer, obviously, but not like stone.
Yeah, but for the time, I mean, it was like, whoa, this is like a really big innovation. So.
Or like those clay, like the clay pipes
Yeah,
that
they,
stood the test of time. Surprising. So, and then so here's the agora down the central area in Philippi, where there'd be shops and stuff around, and then a big area. And back here is a Byzantine ruins of a Byzantine church. So I think that was what, probably 600.
Yeah, probably about
church?
600.
The year
so,
600.
Yeah. So an agora, for those of you that are new, is think of it as like an outdoor marketplace. If you've been to the Galleria, just think of the Galleria just without a roof. You would take your chariots and your horses through there, and then the roads would have ruts in there from all the chariot use.
There'd be roads. There was roads in the town
Yeah,
too.
there was roads in the town too. Yeah. So
And the word agoraphobia is the fear of open spaces. That's where it comes from. Agora, an open space, open market.
So there were shops. There was places you could go for different services. There's public restrooms.
Well, there'd be
latrine, right?
latrines. Yep.
Latrines. Yep.
Yep.
So,
All those things. So we found where we could leave Pastor Rick.
yeah, y'all tried.
So they
No.
they found this. They say it's the prison of St. Paul.
Maybe.
It could be, but we don't know. I mean, it's the right area. It probably was used as a prison, but I mean, there was an earthquake, so the prison may have collapsed and been rebuilt. They don't know for sure.
We were in the ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, he had a prison. So this is what what was left of a prison cell.
Yeah.
So they say it was the prison of St. Paul.
And that's not the original door, mind you.
Yeah. Or original sign.
But
So-
you could peek in there and.
So you could come in. They didn't want people going in because they didn't want people walking away with like souvenirs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So so this is what the inside of it looked like.
Yep.
But from the excavations, I mean,
Yeah.
it
So
still
you
wouldn't-
tried to keep me in there, but then the prison guard was nice and let me out.
You threatened him with an earthquake.
No, I didn't. I gave him some treats. He
Oh,
let me out.
yeah. See this prison guard.
Yeah.
He's away with orange cats. This guy followed us and escorted us around. You'll see him in a few more pictures.
Yeah, he'll pop up again.
Yeah, he's a funny one, little guy.
So,
So yeah.
another view of the
More
agora
of
there.
the
So
agora.
what's in the distance there?
Over here is another church that they had uncovered that had mosaic tiles on the floor. So we'll see pictures of that.
Yeah, they would erect like a structure to kind of protect it from the
Yeah, when
elements.
things are really
So.
worth protecting, they try to find the money to protect them with a roof to protect them from the sun and the elements as much as they can. There he is again. I'm so pretty, he says. Anyway, so she was showing us, our guide was showing us this part of the temple, how big the temple was that was here, that is this, plus our other tour guide. He just jumped right up there, it was so funny, but this is the top, so that circle there is right here, in the center there, showing us the
And that's been there ever since the earthquake that knocked it down.
yeah.
Um,
So, yeah, this city was abandoned due to probably earthquakes and just not being necessary. It wasn't close enough to the water to be,
a lot of different
And then
reasons.
there are more areas along here, more of the columns being remnants of the Byzantine church that was abandoned too after the earthquakes. So this is a rooster. And they think it has to do with, but they're not really sure. They don't know. They see a lot of this in ancient sites and they don't know what it means. They suspect it's a Christian symbol, but they don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know. So, yeah. And then here you can see more of Pastor Rick was talking about how they had the columns standing up with the so, and then we're heading towards the mosaics.
There's a mosaic,
Which,
yeah.
yeah,
It actually
pretty
says
well.
something, but we couldn't really make it out.
Yeah. In Greek. So, but that was a big,
It was Greek to us, yeah. Yeah.
so many ways.
Which is our theme next week, actually.
Yeah.
So,
So, in past weeks, this symbol appeared and they said they thought it was a Christian symbol. So our guide was trying to explain to us what they think the symbol means. That's another one of those cases where it's like, are they just looking for something that's not there? So that's one of the challenges. So yeah, so they think the cross is here, X, which is the first letter for Jesus, Christ is CH, but it's in
And
Greek, it's a chi.
Yep.
And then, so they think that's the chi, and then Y for the Son of God in Greek,
Weos.
Yos.
That's, Yep.
Pardon me, don't we have a
Jesus.
prismon that looks like that? Is it?
Oh yeah, you'll recognize
actually, we do, yeah.
Yeah.
some
Yeah,
of
we do have
these.
some of those like that.
Yes, some of these symbols, you might see them up in the church. You might see the chi, the X, and the P or the rho, which is the first three letters of Christ. That's why the P and the X.
Yeah, here we would see some of those in our Christmas, like the Christmas ornaments that go on the tree, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, she said that this is what they believe it meant as a Christian symbol. There's no historical
Yep.
evidence of that except the symbol itself you see around. So it's one of
Yeah,
those
it
things.
kind of forms the Greek letters that start the name,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. So anyway, that's one of those things that's like,
Theo.
well, is this real? I don't know. Sometimes I think it's a bit of a stretch, but yeah, because they talk about the ichthus, which yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So then we moved on.
So from
to-
Philippi, we
And
headed on down the road and across a narrow bridge over this big wide river to a place called Amphipolis. which is another ancient site. There's not much to it except for a certain statue, which we'll show you here in just a second, that features the lion of Amphipolis. And you
I can explain
a
that.
little
So
bit about that?
Alexander the Great had a general. Oh, if you really want his name, I'll look it up for you. Just raise your hand. I'll pull it up on my phone while Rick's explaining the next thing. He had a general that the statue was commemorated for in honor of him, probably because they called him as a general a lion in battle. So this, so you can see how big the statue is because I'm 5'6".
It's a sizable statue.
Now, the statue was discovered during the Balkan War, parts of it, and then more parts were found during World War I. And then they decided to reconstruct it and move it to this location. It was a couple miles away where they discovered it. So it was one of those things that was sacked by the Ottoman Empire and like wound up. They found it because they drained a pond, not a pond, an area that had been flooded. They drained it. And we're like, oh, look at this ancient ruin. You know, that's happens over there. You dig. Oh, more ancient ruins. So you can see they reconstructed the parts. Luckily, the head was mostly intact. So they were able to figure out what it was. But they had to put some plaster to get it reconstructed.
Yep.
So, yeah. So that's the lion. And that's it. We just stopped to see whatever was lying around.
Oh, gosh. Oh, now you're doing it. We're even now.
Oops. Hey,
Oh,
hey.
I'm not doing it.
Right. So
That was
there
all
you
you.
go. So, okay. On to Thessalonica.
Thessalonica. Remember that letter to the Thessalonians? There's actually two of them, right? 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. So in Acts 17, Paul comes to Thessalonica, or modern day Thessaloniki. Thessaloniki is what they call it now. It's actually a fairly large modern city. They have a subway, not the sandwich restaurant, but the tube where you send the trains through underground, right? So, so it's a fairly large metropolitan area, not quite the size of Athens, but so within the city, there's a rotunda that we'll see. There's an arch that we'll probably see too, I think. And things are built at different times. It wasn't just a Greek city that all of a sudden a big modern day city. Things happened over time here. So there's a statue to Alexander the Great, which is more of a modernist statue that we'll see.
It's only about 100 years
The
old.
Ottomans had some influence here. So in the 1500s, they built what's called the White Tower, which is basically, it looks like a round castle structure that they used as like a defensive spot in a prison. Because why not?
Still older than anything here.
Still older than anything here. Yeah. So that's only about 500 years old.
Yeah.
And then there's also some Byzantine churches that were erected hundreds of years ago, that are Greek Orthodox churches nowadays. And there's also a monastery that's located here as well, which they think is where Paul stayed one night at a man called Jason's house, and then he preached there too. So
That's
we'll
why
get to
they
see
built a
some of these
monastery
things,
there.
so.
Yeah, they thought it was a traditional site. So yeah, so see, we were over here, and we drove
Working
a
our way
bit. When we
down.
stopped for the lion, and then we came,
Yep.
here. So we went up, and it was dusk was falling. So and then so from the church has been rebuilt, obviously, and it is still a church, worshiping community. We'll show you. We're going inside. Baptismal font. There was a tomb from someone from the 1800s that we didn't know about, but here our guide showed a little bit of her. There was she called them gypsies, the Roma people. She warned us to watch our pocketbooks because there were children and a couple of Roma families walking around, and she was telling me that they're pickpockets and telling all of us, and it was
So a little bit of a bias.
yeah. We were like, well, I don't know, maybe she's just had bad experiences, but yeah, it was very
Yeah.
very interesting. So
But we all have those biases in one
yeah,
form or another,
yeah.
so.
But then so it was Saturday night, and they have Saturday night mass usually in the Eastern Orthodox Church, and it's a special mass that night for the dead. They do it once a month. So we were allowed to go in the church. Now mass in the Eastern Orthodox Church lasts 3 hours. So don't complain next time Pastor Rick talks for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So we came in before mass was starting, and people were walking around. So the interesting thing, it's just a different faith, but the interesting thing is there's like, dare I call it, stations, not stations of the cross, but there's different areas in every church where you can go and do something, like you can kiss this, or you can bow to this, or you can touch this. So
Well, they're all like sacred to their
sacred.
tradition.
There's
right?
like an old, like bones of a saint or something like that. So they'll go and they'll do. So some will come in there and do that, light a candle and leave. Some will come, they'll sit down, maybe stay. Some will show up when it's time for communion, the Eucharist. But most of people do not stay the entire 3 hours. They come for a part. The other interesting thing was the ages of people going through there. I expected to see mostly, retired people. No, there was like quite a broad range of ages coming in, walking around. So that was kind of interesting, seeing young adults come in with some of these faith practices. So we sat here and there was the place where they keep the host. Never remember the name of that. The place where the Catholic Church keeps the host. Jesus, anyway.
Chalice?
No, it's like a wall thing.
It's
like
a box.
it's like
Yeah,
a box.
it's a
Yeah.
box.
I can
I've heard
never
it called a
remember
tabernacle.
Tabernacle,
Yeah.
but there's another name
There's
for
another
it.
name for it.
Yeah, there's a special tabernacle that's on the side that people go and see. So yeah. So we were in there for a little bit, and then so here, like we've mentioned, I think maybe we've mentioned before, maybe not. You can't see the altar. The only people allowed at the altar are the priest, and so you're not allowed to see the Holy of Holies. So it's separated from. So that's that. Here, go back. See, it's all covered up with pictures of saints, but back there is the altar. It'd be kind of like putting that in front of the pulpit,
Yeah.
and not being able to see. Just part of the faith.
Yeah.
So then we went over and walked around ancient Thessaloniki, the historical site that they found when they were going to build stuff. So they're like, well, I guess we can't, it's whatever year, we can't build on ancient historical sites anymore. So they've done some excavation work, but they just don't have the money to do a lot of the work there. And there really wasn't, we weren't able to get in, which was fine. We walked around the outside. But it's very similar to some of the other ones in the city we'd seen.
Yeah, there was one that we encountered,
Yeah.
I think it was Smyrna, when
Smyrna.
we were in Turkey, we showed you a couple weeks ago. It's the small city that was like, there was like a parking garage right there and a couple of other things. So this is a similar situation here, and a lot of the features are actually similar
Very
here
similar.
too. So, but there's more to the city that's underground that they can't get to because buildings.
Buildings. I want to displace people,
Yeah, so
because it's
built
still
on
a
top of it.
city
Yeah.
people are living.
Still a very
big,
active city.
Very active city.
Yeah, with the subway.
Yeah.
So,
And then
Yeah, not the restaurant.
and housing and
It
stuff.
strikes me that those cavernous areas that they
Yeah.
unearthed,
Yeah.
Yep. Like down
how
in
could
here.
they possibly, even over eons, have filled in from natural deterioration of it?
Well, they build on top. That was one of the
So
things.
in other
Like
words, they use it as a dump site as they built other things?
probably that's probably the best way to
Okay.
describe
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
It's a
like the
landfill,
towel
in
we
other
talked
words.
about
Yeah.
before.
It
the
could be a
layers.
combination of the two.
Yeah.
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 Mhm.
Yeah. So it's just
Cave in, isn't that pretty?
That too, yeah.
yeah. So so we hopped back on the bus and went down to see. There's the statue of Alexander the Great on his horse, and then there's the White Tower, 500 years old. So, and Rick's doing this little light of mine. I made him
Gotta let it
sing.
shine.
And we went to sleep, and we got up the next morning, and we went to church again, but not really going to church, going
No.
to see the monasteries. Our guide had checked with this is the Vladidon Monastery that Rick mentioned at the beginning, where they built the monastery there because they believe Paul stayed there at some point. So this monastery was built in honor of his visit. It was not the best day. It was raining, kind of like yucky. So
Rain,
we
kinda cold.
went inside. So here we went inside too during church again, and we're sitting down, and they had the adoration of scripture. One of the deacons or priests comes out and holds the holy book, and people can come up and kiss it. I'm like, ew. His lips have been on that, Like, okay.
Yeah, everybody got a different peak.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff, I was like, no wonder COVID spread. No, but yeah.
But
It's
it was
different.
It was
It's
neat to
just-
experience how that faith tradition, how meaningful it is to them,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
it'd be
it's-
like them coming here and seeing what we do, like, oh, okay.
Why don't you
yeah.
touch anything? Yeah, why don't you? Why is nobody bowing? Why is nobody genuflecting?
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
just different. So then outside of the monastery is a little outdoor, beautiful, beautiful mosaics here. Again, different artist renditions. So here's Paul.
Speaking of the people in Meteora.
Peoria, which is the neighboring town.
Yep.
And then this is the vision of Paul. Again, to other different artists. So it's kind of funny. They make Paul look kind of sleepy because it's a bit. He looks pretty well fed too.
He's got more hair there.
Got
too.
more hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little more. He's still got the.
Still got the
you
Klingon
know,
forehead going
Okay,
on there.
maybe a
but,
little
yeah.
more than a tug. So like I said, every artist has got a different rendition.
He was younger here, maybe.
Yeah, and this is come over to Macedonia and help us. Now it's a bit. Now see, you can see it's not an angel. This is a person of Macedonia. So there's no wings, there's no halo. So you know it was the vision that he had of the person, the man. Can I? Okay. There we
Yep,
go.
go.
So then here's like I said, artist rendition of Paul. Here's Paul again. So and I was jokingly saying doing looks like Martin Luther. Not really. Martin Luther was way better fed than Paul. Look at how thin his fingers.
Scissors he has.
Yeah, I know. I look at his fingers and go.
Yeah, they're long fingers, yeah.
Yeah, really long fingers. Very long. So
It might have been the beard more than the food.
maybe.
Probably at the time, yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. So yeah. So yeah.
So next we come to Aigai, however you pronounce that. It's hard to know how to pronounce that, but anyway, it's the modern day city of Regina, which is a small out of the way place. This is where Alexander the Great grew up. This was his hometown. So we didn't get to see these things because it was raining out, but there is a palace there. There's a theater where Alexander's father, Philip II,
Didn't see any of that, but
was
we saw that.
assassinated, and this is where Alexander the Great got his start. But Philip II, since he was assassinated there, they erected a tomb there. They had a big, large funeral pyre and a whole celebration, not only for Philip, but for his wife as well.
We'll get into that.
Yeah, which we're gonna get into in a little bit. So there's a museum with the actual tomb. And they discovered the tomb not that long ago.
Yeah, 1980s.
But they decided that they didn't want to just expose it to the elements and unearth it and all that kind of stuff. Plus, it was loaded with artifacts and things like that they didn't want to see looted or anything like that. So they're very fortunate that everything is there. So they kept the tomb where it was, they kept the land where it was, and just kind of dug in and made sort of an underground sort of museum.
So these are two entrances that go into
That mound's
into
there.
the cemetery there. So basically, it was an ancient cemetery that became kind of a tell situation where they built up over it over the centuries. So this tomb, the Philip's tomb, is from about 300 BC. So yeah. So then they found. So what the first things they found were the tombstones when they were excavating and then uncovered. So yeah. So
This is an example of one of them.
Example of one of the tombstones. So, and two men, a father seated, inscription with names. They believe that basically, you know, it was it had the names of the deceased and everyone was buried together. So, in that spot.
Yep.
So they have a bunch of those when you come in, and you come into the museum, and we don't have good pictures. I apologize, but it was so low. It was kind of like the lighting in here right now. You know how it's dim? That's how the museum is. Everything is dim. And it's a big open space. So you go in, and there's this is on the wall. One of the paintings they found. One of the
frescoes.
but you can kind of see
very
the
roughly
writing.
done, but you kind of see.
But and think how old that is. You can still see really a lot of color on it. They didn't do anything to that. That's just how they found it. So, and then all the artifacts they found with the different cemetery, the graves and stuff that they found there, different things people they thought would need in the afterworld. You know, like they need to be able to cook and they need to be able to clean, you know, all those important things. So this is the tomb of Philip II. How did they know? So they didn't know until they opened it. So they were they knew from the outside that this looks important, right? Because of the money spent and the dating, knowing it was, you know, the year 300 BC. They're like, okay, this is going to be a really important find. They had no idea though that it was. They thought it might be somebody related to the royal family. They didn't know it was going to be royal family.
The royal family.
The royal Philip.
Yeah.
So you can walk down in, so they kept the tombs, both of them, the one Philip, and then the other one is Alexander's son Philip, who died as a teenager. So the two, you can walk down in and walk to the front, but you can't go in. So they've tried to be mindful that this is a burial site. That's one of the reasons the lights are dim. There's, the display cases are all tastefully done. It's just really, so what they did with Philip, he was burned on a funeral pyre with items he would need in the afterworld, they thought. So all these are the fragments from the funeral pyre that was inside. Yeah, all sorts of different things they were able to recreate and see what he had. And then this is some of the stuff that was outside the tomb, a guard, you know. So here's
That was
Philip.
Philip's armor, I believe.
Philip's armor, yeah. Thank you. I forgot what that was. So this is his crown of laurels. Yes, that is gold. One of the reasons it's surprised. Luckily, nobody found it. Would have been looted over the centuries if they had known this was here. This would not have been. So thank goodness they didn't find it. These are his ashes. Now, interred with him was his wife. They're pretty sure she died by suicide. That was the expectation of royal wives at that time in history in that empire. So
he died,
she took her own life.
Yeah.
And then was interred. Yeah. So so her, and this is what they've recreated, some of the garments she was wearing. She was burned in funeral.
Yeah,
Right,
she
but that
also
was
had
her
a
crown.
laurel too.
Laurel too. So, and then so this is Philip, Alexander's son. This is Philip's grandson.
Yep.
His tomb, his laurel crown is a bit smaller because he was younger. So
Yeah, that zoomed in. But-
zoomed in.
Yeah.
So, and then his ashes are inside.
went through a fire?
Well, no,
That did not, no.
No, I think they put
kept
it on
that
top.
separate.
yeah, but
Yeah.
so that they basically burn and then put them in the boxes. Their ashes went in the box.
Yep.
And then so they kind of kept that intact.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was really, like I said, we just couldn't get great pictures there. But it was so worth. I was so glad. I was like, oh, what are we going here for? And I'm like, whoa.
Exactly, yeah.
This is the coolest museum I've been in.
Yeah. And then the other piece of it too is that you don't hear about this in the Bible, but this gives you some context so that you can understand the world that they lived in at the time. That this
Right.
is some of the influence that drove what they experienced at the time.
Yes, so Alexander the Great is responsible for the Bible, the New Testament being written in Greek. How, Pastor? Well, because he, in conquest, as I said, he basically spread the Greek culture throughout the ancient world by conquest. He was known for that. So, and when he would conquer people, they would establish Greek settlements. People learned to speak Greek. Jesus spoke Greek. The New Testament is written in Greek. Paul spoke Greek. I mean, they spoke a couple languages, Greek, and a few others as well. Latin and probably a version of Hebrew. So
Yeah.
Jesus spoke 3 different.
Aramaic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
depending.
Yeah.
So that's why Alexander is important, and his family is important to the Bible.
And when the Romans came through and took everything over, they were fairly accommodating, believe it or not. I mean, they let you speak your local language, which for a lot of them turned out to be Greek. As long as you didn't go, you had to go and worship their gods that they came through and renamed all the Greek gods for.
The Greek and Roman gods were pretty similar.
Yeah.
Some of them had the same name, not all, but just different. Yeah.
Yeah,
So they
as
would-
long as you didn't upset the cart.
Right.
So.
Exactly. Worship the emperor.
Yeah.
So so then we moved on to
So then we moved on to Meteora. So you hear the word meteorology, meteorologist,
Or
like
meteor.
weather, that kind of thing, Meteora. So there's your root word for that. And we kind of saw some meteorology while we were here.
But meteor literally
meteor,
means rock.
Rock. Yes, exactly. So, and the reason why it's rock is because this is a very mountainous region, and I may have should have said it is a uniquely mountainous region, because the mountains that we've seen so far are very rocky, ragged, tall, kind of a thing. These aren't the tallest mountains in the world, but they almost look like they're one smooth rock, like literally one giant smooth piece of rock, and that's a mountain. So we're going to see some of that through here. It's a very unique geological type of area. So you'll see some of these. However, we ran into some meteorology, so it was kind of foggy and snowy. We'll get to the snow in a little bit here.
Yeah.
But, so on top of these rocks, which almost look like these pillars that shoot up out of the ground like hundreds of feet, the Byzantines decided, oh, this is a great place to place monasteries. And think about it, how tall they are. They thought, ooh, this is about as close as we're gonna get to touching God.
Yeah.
So they put the monasteries up there, thinking that, ooh, this is a great place to be. It's isolated. It's very hard to get up there, especially back then. And then, so they built up a series of monasteries on these rocks scattered throughout the region. Are there any James Bond fans in the room? Okay, a couple of you. There was a scene from one of the older Bond films in this region. There was like some sort of high-speed chase up in these
We weren't
mountainous
James Bond
area.
fans, so it didn't register with us.
Didn't quite register. I'm not sure if it was the Sean Connery days or somewhere around there.
Probably, but I'm not sure yet.
I don't think it
Or
was
if
George Lazenby. See, I know my
Timothy
Bond a little
Dalton,
bit.
maybe.
No,
No?
no,
He's too
it was
new.
before then. Yeah,
Timothy
but anyway,
Dalton's older than you think.
Yes, I realize that. Watch it. Do a Bond marathon this weekend. See if you can find it. But come to church on Sunday though. So there's 24 of these on these rocks, if you will. Only 6 of them are inhabited nowadays though, and we got to see two of them. So, and in the inside of these monasteries, there's little sanctuaries where they would go and worship, and they had more frescoes on them, like what we saw earlier in our
In
presentation
Philippi, you know
tonight.
those pictures we were showing you.
Yeah.
They're the ancient frescoes. The oldest ones are before the Ottomans came in and took over Greece.
Yeah.
So some of them date back, I think, to the 12th and 13th century,
Yeah.
and have been preserved. Why they survived the Ottoman Empire is because they couldn't get to them, really. So they took over, they let them keep, so it wasn't, the monasteries that weren't destroyed because of their location.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
it was hard to get to.
However, they don't let you take pictures of them.
So there is a book, that's next to Dave, so you
Yep.
wanna hold up the Meteora one and just show people. So if you wanna
Yeah,
look
you
at
can
what
pass
some of
that
the
around.
frescoes look like inside, Pastor got the book,
Yeah.
so.
And
And,
they're
yeah.
very strict about that too. Like
They're
they
very
have,
strict
like,
about photography, they've got they've got the cameras watching you to make sure,
Yep.
which is kind of ironic.
And
They got
people-
cameras watching you, so you don't take
and
pictures.
people ready to be on you just like that to say no pictures.
Yeah, so.
So,
But
Yeah.
somebody made a book of,
well, somebody made a book.
Well,
of
that's
it.
because they were selling it.
okay, all right.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
sold it.
There
I
was a
know.
little something in it for them.
It's like, it must be, I don't know, there's some reason.
They sold at least one book.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, quite a few to our group. We
yeah,
had
they did.
a lot of book
That's true.
people.
Yeah. So, and you wanted to mention something else?
Oh, no, you didn't mention the
Pastor,
snow.
Yes, please.
Byzantine, is that another, group like the Ottomans? What is-
So they existed pre-Ottoman. They were in between like the Romans and the Ottomans. So the Byzantines, that was like that's where the early church got its start.
The Byzantine and Roman Catholic Church had a split,
Yeah.
Okay.
so, and then that's what the Eastern Orthodox Church was, had its roots in,
Yeah. So this
Byzantine
is like
Christian.
Eastern Rome. It got its start in Istanbul or Byzantium. And then it existed for a number of centuries until the Ottomans came through and took things over. So
Yeah.
Okay. So, the Holy Roman Empire, was that a different era?
that was a different era. It was before.
Okay,
Yep.
way before.
Yeah,
All right.
so you have Alexander the Great came through, everything went Hellenistic and Greek. The Romans then came through, and then the Byzantines, then the Ottomans, and
And the
that
Holy Roman.
more or less gets us up to where
Okay,
we're at
thank you.
today. So, yep.
Well, and then Greece and Turkey became their own.
And then Greece and Turkey
The
became
Holy
their own
Roman
countries after
Empire
World War
was,
I, and, yeah.
was over, didn't quite go that far.
Yep.
I'll have to look at that. So anyway, so you can see, the landscape here, and we'll show you more pictures, but this is, so this monastery was partially destroyed, the frescoes were destroyed, they were redone in the 1970s and 80s, but she just wanted to show us what to expect, so that when we went the next day. So this one she took to, this was done, I think part of it was destroyed in World War II.
Yep.
So, and then walking over, and then, there's
Yeah,
Pastor Rick.
it's up there. Yeah.
It's up there. You can see, okay, this is over, Pastor taking down. So, the different, and then the town below, and then
There we are.
2 of us. getting our picture taken.
That was a Shiraz picture, that was
Our photographer took,
trip
yeah.
photographer.
Lots of people. So, but yeah, you can
Yeah.
see.
Yeah,
some
you
of
can
the
see how they look like it's just
fog.
like one big rock.
Yeah, pictures
Yeah.
just don't do it. Don't do it justice. And then there's a courtyard at this monastery we were at.
We could take outdoor pictures,
Yeah,
just
just
nothing
no indoor.
Yeah.
No indoor, and then, yeah. So, so you can see over here's the parking lot and stuff, but there are, sometimes there's bridges that you have to cross to get to the monasteries. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's.
don't look
it's
down.
A little scary. A little scary the next day. So then we went to a hotel that our professor had never been to before in Meteora. It's a newer hotel, 4.5 stars, right? Used to 4.5
Yeah,
stars.
the sign said 4.5 stars.
This is our balcony. It was a really nice hotel. We were really like this.
Yeah.
Like the facility bed was really nice.
No, that's just a courtyard outside.
So this is the courtyard. Over here are the mountains, and unfortunately, couldn't really see them very well. They would peek out, and they're like, "Go get your camera," and he'd bring the camera out, and it's gone.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, it was a
but
foggy.
very, you can see how rocky. So that's the night, and then the next morning, it snowed. So we got a dusting.
Yeah.
You can see the trees covered in some of the mountains, and that's the village nearby.
Yeah. We brought a little buffalo with us here.
Yeah. And we're like, yeah, that was our fault. Sorry.
Remind me, what month was this?
This is January.
January.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look like it's undercut.
Yep. So then we hopped on a bus and we were heading towards the biggest monastery that was at the top of one of the hills. And we started to head that way. And the bus driver said, nope.
So snow over there is very much elevation driven. Down below, it's like, okay, the roads are wet, no big deal. You get up further, it gets slushy, and then it's that wet, slippery, greasy snow, and the bus and the plow had yet to get up there. So you can feel it like fishtailing a little bit, and then suddenly you feel like the wheels like they couldn't really.
People on
make
the
it
bus,
any
like we're
further.
from Buffalo, we're like,
Yeah.
yeah, he's going slow, we'll be
Yeah.
fine. And the people around us are like, oh my God, we're gonna die.
But then he eventually decided, no, we're not gonna make it any
He's
further.
like, yeah, he's like not worth it. So she, and then she found out that she called and discovered that the one we were going to was closed. The employees couldn't get there for the day, and school was closed that day in this region. So, so
Because of
Yeah.
the weather?
because of the weather.
The weather, yeah.
Because of the weather.
Yeah.
So you can see the snow falling. This is a monastery. We didn't go up to this one. We stopped and she showed us pictures, and then Peggy was making plans. She's like, I guess she finally came up with another monastery we could go to. Not as nice, but just so that we could go see one. So then we drove.
Was there actually a road going up to?
Yeah, I'll show you the road in one of the pictures here.
Yeah, there's
There.
a main road that snakes
This is
up
the
through
road.
there, yeah.
And then it
That's
goes.
it.
You
Let
can
me
see
zoom in there.
part of it here. Yeah. So there's our bus, right here, under the, and there's a car. But this is the road, and it's 2 lane. It's wide enough for 2 cars. It was pretty safe when it wasn't snowing.
Yeah.
Um,
And it
so
wasn't
yeah.
like an unusual snowstorm. I mean, around
It
here we
wasn't a
would
way
call
out.
it Wednesday.
Not like
Yeah.
we're used to.
Yeah.
That's why we weren't scared. We're like, this is nothing.
And it's quite the wall there, isn't it? That,
Yeah.
whoa.
Yeah, so this is
Uh-huh.
the cliff face. So yeah, we went to the monastery of St. Nicholas. So we had to climb up. This was the entrance. There were steps, and they were not plowed or shoveled.
So an inch of that greasy wet snow on slate
steps going up. So we were all
Yeah.
pretty caught. And I'm looking
We
around
took
some of
our
our
time.
troop, and I'm like, we do not need broken hips or knees or anything on
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Everybody be careful. Hold on to the side.
We all made it though.
We all made it.
We're here to tell a tale.
Yes, we all.
Yep.
So, and the other weird, St. Nicholas requires appropriate clothing. What is appropriate clothing? Apparently women need to wear skirts. So when we got up there, we were handed a skirt to put over our, a wraparound skirt you just tie. Seriously? But I guess they
Yeah.
get a lot of summer tourists that come in short shorts.
Yeah.
So that's their answer
That's
to
the
that.
thing,
Yeah, so we climbed up here, and we don't have a picture of it, but there was this little bridge. That was like this on a little, so we climb up the steps and we have to go over this bridge, and there is
wasn't
nothing
long or
below you to
anything.
get to the monastery. Like, I'm really gonna die.
I'm
But
sweating as you're
it
talking.
was scary, it was scary.
I'm sweating thinking
Thinking
about
about
it.
it.
I know, heights is, as I've told you before, heights is a fear of mine, and I push myself, but every now and then I'm like just remind myself, I'm not gonna die. I I jokingly do. I'm gonna die. No, I'm joking to myself. That's how I get through it. So,
Yeah.
even though I may really be thinking that. So, but yeah, just more of the snow, and then me in the snow, right at home.
Yeah.
I think it might have been snowing here that day.
I don't know.
Back home. But yeah, you can see and you just can't see the tops. But when the sun is out, if that ever happens, it does.
It's quite a spectacular sight.
spectacular, and if
Even
you look
like
at the
this it
book, you
was.
can see.
Yeah. I mean, you can
see
imagine
there.
just what's beyond that fog.
Yeah,
Right.
it was very, very cool,
Yeah.
literally, and cold.
And
Cool
cold,
and
yeah.
cold, but fun. So where we went after this, we're gonna show you next week, cause it fits better with Corinth and stuff. It's a historical site called Delphi. And you'll see why we're gonna show that to you next week. So
Yeah.
we added that in the next week and decided to do the icon store. The icon store. So, what's an icon? Are any of you familiar with icons?
Some little thing on a computer.
Yes, it is.
Aside from that, though.
Aside from that, so icons are pictures done of saints, religious people, Jesus, so different. So it's a way for people to kind of commemorate and have their own little icon that they can pray. So people like icons. They personally have never done anything for me. I've never really thought much about them because I don't like pictures of heads. So anyway. And that's most of the historical icons are pictures of heads of saints, or in this case, this is Mary and baby Jesus. So those are a lot of what you would see. But back in here, you can see all the different saints and pictures of Jesus and different things.
And
People
some-
hang them in their homes to remind them. And
Yeah, and some of them are fresco-like what we saw earlier. They might have some action and some scenes in them too.
those
So,
are the newer ones.
the newer
though.
ones. Yeah.
So ancient tradition of icons is something that
Yeah.
focuses mostly in on the face
face
and the
head,
gold leaf in the back. So these are all hand painted, done at this icon workshop. And then so Pastor Rick and I was looking around and I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna find an icon I like. Well, I did. Here it is, and here it is. So.
That's awesome.
I was like, ooh, I really like, and don't, feel free to touch it. You're not gonna hurt it. So,
Passing it around here.
so I'm curious, looking at this picture, what would you call that Bible story?
Is he walking on the
Storm.
water?
Jesus walking on the water. Yep. Or you like me, Jesus calming the storm is what I
That's
call
what I was
it.
thinking.
Yeah.
Jesus
Right,
coming.
right.
What kind of man is this that
Right.
the wind and the
Yeah.
The
sea
wind and the
obey?
sea obey him. Right, exactly. So anyway, my first was like, Jesus calming the storm. So then I asked one of the people there, I'm like, where's the icon of Jesus calming the storm? And she said, oh, Jesus walking on water. I had to call it the right name or they couldn't find it for you.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so I really liked it. And then there was another one of the Peaceable Kingdom. So these are a newer design, only been around probably 15 years or so. Probably for the same reason, people like me who don't like faces but want more of a story. So it's
Yeah.
kind of a combination of a mural, fresco, and an icon all in one. So I like it. And then there's a certificate, and he's showing that to the people of authenticity with, of course, the wax seal, which makes it official. But as it's being passed around, you can see. What I personally like about it is I love water, and I love that story of Jesus calming the storm. So then I was like, oh, Rick, you should pick one out. Copycat.
Is there another one?
So we both have the same icon in our office. So this is
Yeah.
Pastor Rick's and mine's at my office.
Yep.
So yeah. So that was fun.
Well, they're both the same?
Yep.
Yeah, they're both
Yes,
the
they are.
same one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he's mean and has to copy notes. I have great taste. That's right. That's it, right?
It's exactly right. I couldn't beat it. Yeah, exactly. May as well
So,
join it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, that's it for tonight. So, any questions? That's my pointer for questions.
Kind of out of context here,
Nope.
because I'm
Okay.
interested in logistics, but you guys took a bus this whole.
So we flew and then two
Well,
different
yeah.
buses.
Two different
Yeah,
buses.
there was a bus in Turkey and a bus in Greece, because
Okay.
you can't, I guess with the laws and stuff, you can't take the same guide across the border.
Okay.
Yeah, so we switched at the border. I got in a Greek guide
Alright.
and a Greek bus and a Greek bus
Was
driver.
there like a ferry I saw on the map across the?
That's where Paul.
Paul took that,
Paul took
yeah.
that.
We were entirely on land the whole time.
Okay.
Next week's presentation, I'm gonna have a little section titled, just how far did we go?
Yeah.
And I'll detail that a bit more for you.
There are modern day ferries though that.
Oh,
cross.
yes.
There
Yes,
are,
yes,
so
there
in
is, yeah,
Paul's
yeah.
day, it was faster to get places by
By
water.
Right.
That was their,
Yeah.
you know, that was air travel then,
Right.
you know, the fastest way to get there. Because it was traveling by foot. Most people couldn't afford a donkey or a horse. That was for the chariots were for the, you know, obviously, the important people only. So yeah, but we were in a bus, so which was really nice. Bus napping is much more comfortable than, sorry, your pilot. You don't fly people, so you don't have to worry about making them comfortable, yeah. Yeah,
This might be a dumb question, but I know in their housing of today or whatever, it's a lot of blue houses and roofs. Does that have to do with the blue of religion?
oh, the blue, the housing and,
Greece, yeah.
Greece. I think it's-
So that's more in the Greek islands down where it's warmer. That might be more of a practical thing, just to keep the buildings cooler, but there could be something to what you're saying there, yeah, I'm just not sure.
Yeah.
yeah, that
So-
wasn't something that we encountered, but yeah, that's a good question.
Yep.
Cool.
So
Any,
Paul, in all the depictions here, what year approximately would he have been alive?
so he was a couple years after Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection, so, Paul wrote most of his
Probably
letters.
the 40s and
40s and
50s.
50s.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe into the 60s a little bit.
Okay.
yeah.
Didn't he also go to Egypt and North Africa, even over to Morocco or Spain or somewhere?
No, that wasn't Paul, that I know of,
Okay.
yeah.
There was another, one of the same, yeah, who went that direction. Yeah,
Yeah,
Paul
yeah.
made it as far as Rome, I think,
Yeah, Paul made it as far as Rome.
Okay.
Yep.
that
Yeah,
way,
he
but
stayed
never-
basically in the north of the
Yeah.
Mediterranean.
But that one picture you showed, you said that you couldn't see the altar because they had it changed, but that's the way it was way back, you know, before Jesus' time, you know.
Yes,
we
the
don't-
Holy of Holies,
Right,
exactly,
right,
in the
right.
Jewish faith,
Yeah.
yeah, so on, and you'll hear, you're doing the Passion Sunday for Palm Sunday, you're doing the
Yeah,
Passion
we're
reading.
doing a passion reading.
So this year, in the, couple of the Passion stories, when Jesus dies, the temple of the the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. That was the curtain that separated that area. The only time people could go behind it was the priest on the Day of Atonement. So that rips, that was a symbol that God is not divided from humanity anymore, so, yeah,
So the tearing of the curtain was a good thing.
yes.
How many days or years did it take for Paul to walk this or travel?
He was in ministry over a decade,
Yeah,
yeah,
so to say that the first journey probably, was the shortest, then they've progressively got longer, so.
He spent 2 years in Ephesus, was it?
Yeah, he spent some time in some of these places too, so,
Ephesus, or was it,
Years probably.
somewhere around
or was
there.
it Corinth? No, it was Corinth. But yeah, he spends
Yeah,
a lot
anyway.
of time in some of
Yep.
the places.
Yeah, there's places you can find out that information, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But a while,
Yeah.
yeah.
Any other questions? If you think of them, feel free to ask us next week. Or ask Pastor Rick on Sunday.
Yeah, ask me during the sermon, yeah. I'll-
Yeah.
I'll right on that, so.
Wait, Pastor, I have a
Excuse
question.
me, yeah.
Yeah, so,
I hate to do this one.
just a reminder before we say the Lord's Prayer and wrap up for tonight, next week is our last week, where our theme is, it's Greek to me.
Yep.
So we'll get into more of that. And then again, if you search for Trinity Akron on YouTube, or if you know where our church's YouTube channel is, all of our past videos are there, and including tonight and next week. So they're all going to be there, a 5-episode series. Yeah, so we archived them all there for you. So
They will not be going away. So.
not at all.
Great. All right. Well, those who are able and would like to, I invite you to rise for the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining us. Have a good week.
Could I trouble some of the men